Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to my Higurashi When They Cry Let's Play. Today we'll be recording episode 35. So, first of all, the very first thing I want to say is, so remember how last time I talked about how I think I fixed the audio bugs? Wrong, I didn't. I fixed one of them. The one that impacted the first 30 minutes of episode 33 I did fix, but I went back and I watched the whole video and I noticed that if you're paying attention to the audio specifically, during the Toshiki Inukai rescue scene, every time the rain loops, it sounds really weird, and the voices would the quality and the volume would slightly fluctuate. And while it wasn't a huge deal, right, it wasn't nearly as bad as what happened in 33. I was like, okay, that's still annoying. So I went and tried to find a bunch of solutions. I couldn't really find anything for a while, and then finally I stumbled upon one, and it was run OBS in administrator mode. Yeah, I wasn't doing that, and I ran it in administrator mode, and I recorded that same scene 3 times in testing, and I've had absolutely no issues. The audio definitely sounded better in my testing. So hopefully, for real, the audio is fixed this time. So we'll see. I hope so. I guess let me know if the audio sounds fine, right? If you guys notice any bugs, right, please let me know. I'm obviously doing my best to make sure that the audio in video is of a high quality. I tweaked a decent amount of settings for this video because I thought they would fix the audio. So hopefully nothing dramatically changes in the video quality. I think I just... What all did I mess with? You guys probably don't care about the technical details, actually. But I changed the recording format and the rate control. That's all I did. Honestly, it was kind of dumb that I was still recording in MP4 after having several times where I actually lost an entire video, right? So I'm now recording in a format that is lossless. I should have done that ages ago. I don't know why I wasn't. Anyways, that's just kind of some basic technical stuff. Hopefully that'll all be a bit better. But let's talk about the video itself now. What is going to happen in this episode. So, last episode was a big one in terms of major plot events. We found the clues that directly linked Hinamizawa to the kidnapping of Toshiki. And we followed that wallet and where it was found, and we found Toshiki Inukai. We also found Irie there, who did nothing, as far as we could tell, to help the kid. So, more reason to be suspicious of him. But we get there, we go to rescue him, a fight breaks out, Oishi loses his fight, Akasaka loses his fight, and is getting 2v1'd. He gets his head beat in with a rock before the 2v1 starts, and he also ends up getting shot even in the shoulder. So he took some damage. Akasaka's kind of a warrior. But eventually Oishi sneaks up on him, and then Akasaka uses that as a chance to distract the guy, who will just kill him. That is what he has deduced. That one of them is kind of a coward, right? Whereas the other will not hesitate. And so he distracts him, gets him to put his gun away for a second, and Oishi then takes it from him, has 2 guns, pointing them both at the at the kidnappers, and they run away. And Toshiki has been successfully rescued, which is awesome, fantastic. They didn't even have to let loose a shot. Right, I was the one encouraging them to let loose shots. Again, maybe I was a little overzealous. I really thought that they weren't going to get the kid, honestly. I mean, I knew eventually they were going to get the kid, but I didn't think it was going to be there, to be honest. But after that, Akasaka passes out, and we don't really know what happens to him. So that's where we're going to pick up from. We're going to see what happens with Akasaka after he passes out, and what presumably tumultuous events we're going to see today. Because I guess one other big thing is Rika saw that we were still here, right, snooping around, and so I'm sure something's going to happen with Rika The dam site murder hasn't happened yet. I'm sure that's in this episode or the next, right? There's a lot still to see. And so let's just jump right into it without wasting any further time. It's been already 5 minutes. Whoops. Yeah, I got nothing else to say, so we're just going to hit continue. That was my first time losing consciousness. You often hear of regaining consciousness on top of a bed, but this was my first time actually experiencing it. Ooh,
Moshi-moshi. 大丈夫ですか?
Realizing that I was awake, a young doctor called out to me. I didn't intend to respond, but it seems my body language had told him I was conscious. My head was wrapped in bandages. The scratches all over my body had also been treated. My sense of pain also returned with my consciousness, causing me to groan from the intense pain shooting all throughout me.
起きないで横になっていてください。頭をだいぶ殴られたようですからね。
Yeah, he did.
24時間は特に安静にして容体を見守りたいところです。
That is not how that's gonna go.
ここは私の診療所です。入江と申します。よろしく。
I remember that this young doctor was the one in the car headed the opposite way earlier.
誰かいませんか、大石さんは。
あ、呼んできましょう。診療所の中は禁煙なんで、表で吸ってもらってるんです。
That does sound like Oishi. You know, I hadn't thought about this. Do we know Irie's first name? I feel like we do, and I don't remember it. I don't know if it's super important. It was just like, I genuinely don't know. I feel like we know his name. I'm not gonna worry too much about that detail right now. I'm certainly not gonna look up Irie Higurashi, right? Not happening. Last thing I want to see is something like Irie Higurashi death or Irie Higurashi villain reveal, right? Like, I don't know if either of those will happen, right? But like, you know, I certainly don't want to look it up and see those words. The scenery outside the window was tinted with gold. The pouring rain had stopped, with the voices of the Higurashi heralding the cooling temperature. I felt that the tone of the Higurashi's voice was comforting. Eventually I could hear heavy footsteps coming closer, which I reckoned to be Oishi's. The fog that was enveloping my head slowly faded back to reality. What had happened since then? What had happened to the boy? What about the reinforcements from Tokyo? The door to the room flew open, allowing Dr. Irie and Oishi to enter.
じゃあ命に別状はないんでしょ？
ないとお約束はできません。頭に受けた傷は所見だけでは判断が危険なのです。
わかりましたわかりました。ちょいと彼と二人で話がしたいんですが。よろしく。
ええ、どうぞ。何かありましたらお呼びください。
Interesting, because we got to keep in mind now that he might have some form of like serious head trauma, which might cause. I mean, straight up, he might have like brain damage, right? Like, can cause all sorts of errors, right? And what's Oishi want to talk to us solo about? Oishi, after basically forcing Dr. Irie outside, shut the door.
いかがですか、お具合は。
慣れないことをしたんで、
Yeah.
全身がボロボロです。
Yeah, you know what you weren't used to? Getting your ass whooped. Oishi brought over a folding chair that was leaning against the wall and sat down beside the bed.
犯人たちは逮捕されましたか？
No shot.
残念ながら、とっくに県外へ逃げたか、村人にかくまわれているかのどちらかでしょうね。まあ、逃がしはしませんが。
大臣の孫は？
署で保護しています。ただ、東京のあなたのご同僚から一切の聴取は取るなと。しげちゃんが憤慨してましたっけ？
The kidnapping was a confidential matter, so his custody was also probably being kept under wraps. How the kidnapping of the minister's grandson would be handled, how it would be covered up, treated like it never happened, would be handled by the brass. If this case ended without the nation going into an uproar about it, then our job had been done. The possibility that the minister had negotiated with the perpetrators couldn't be ruled out. But something like that was no longer my concern. My role in this case was over.
ご迷惑をおかけします。公安ってやつはいやらしいところだって思ってるでしょ。
Is your role in this case over, bro? I don't know. I'm not so sure on it.
思いません思いません。お互い日の丸から給金もらって仕事してるだけですよ。
Oishi laughed boisterously. When we first met, I was somewhat prejudiced against Oishi. Now that feeling was gone completely.
今回の事件隠さないで大元にしてくれた方がこっちは都合がいいんですけどね。そうすれば黒幕の園崎本家に少しは迫れるんですが。
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
まあ適当に迫ったところで圧力がかかるんでしょうがね。やれやれです。
大石さんは園崎本家に今後も戦いを。
You know, I'll give him that. At least on paper, he's, continuing the fight against the Sonozakis.
まさかいろいろと黒い噂こそ絶えませんがね。園崎家に恨みがあるわけじゃありませんので。
Well, that changes within 5 years.
君子危うきに近寄らない方がいいんですよ。
I guess in all fairness, there's a very good reason that it changed with how frequent those murders are. Oishi laughed happily, and I couldn't help but laugh along.
そうだそうだ。さっき県警から署に連絡があったそうです。あなたのご同僚が名古屋に到着したそうで、今車でこちらへ向かっているそうです。あなたは名誉の負傷ですから東京へ引き上げだそうですよ。
Oh, that's good.
そんなわけです。あなたの沖宮での仕事は無事終了です。
I was being recalled to Tokyo. I inadvertently breathed a sigh of relief when I heard those words.
大石さんのご協力に深く感謝します。
I think he's earned that sigh of relief after just barely escaping with his life when he has an unborn child. Or they might be born by now and he doesn't even know, you know?
あなたに支払った協力金は無駄にはなりませんでしたね。
You know, I'll give you that. It definitely didn't go to waste. Mole or not, which we don't know for sure yet, he certainly clutched up.
あら、冗談のつもりだったんだけどな。
Oishi took out his wallet, casually pulled out several large bills, and jammed them into the breast pocket of my shirt.
これは協力金の返済じゃないですよ。私からあなたへのお小遣いです。
Dude, I'm still doubting Oishi, and it's so hard to. They really are like, they're making him out to be like a good guy, right? Who has some rough tendencies, but a good guy nonetheless.
この辺は地酒がうまいんでね。東京へのお土産にこいつで買っていくといいでしょ
う。Oishi flashed me a
も
grin.
しもあなたの傷が軽いようなら、東京へ帰る前にぜひ声をかけてくださいよ。
Is this the we've got one more job?
おやさんも佐藤さんもぜひあなたともう一度宅を囲みたいと言ってましたからね。
Oh, that'd be fun.
やれやれ。参ったな。
今度はこっちも小細工抜きです。純粋に楽しもうじゃないですか。
よく言いますよ。現職の警官があんなに恋様ができるなんて。
That's true.
私どもとね、対等以上に打てるメンツにはなかなかお会いできないもんです。あなたが東京に帰るのが惜しいですよ。
When I heard the words going back to Tokyo from Oishi, I was reminded once again that I was relieved from my duties. Soon, Yuki would be giving birth. It might still be possible to attend the delivery that I had at one time given up on. When I thought that, the pain from my injuries became trivial. I wanted to hurry back to Tokyo and see Yuki at once.
少し傷が重いふりをして沖宮にしばらく滞在しません？いいお店をいろいろ紹介しますよ。もちろんおごれなんて言いません。
申し訳ないですが、それはまたの機会にします。妻の出産日が近いんでね。早く帰りたいんです。
ありゃりゃ、それは知らなかった。
Yeah, he didn't even know.
それじゃあこんなとこにいちゃいけない。早く帰らないといけません。
For a while after that, Oishi asked all sorts of questions about my wife, teasing and bantering with me. Is he actually going to get, dismissed from the hospital, or are they breaking him out?
具合はどうです？おきれいそうですか？
ええ。おかげさまで悪くないです。立って歩いても全然平気ですよ。
I stood up and shuffled around for a bit, which seemed to amuse Oishi.
いえ。ひなみ沢の病院では落ち着かないでしょうと思いまして。
Yeah, also true.
入江の先生は一晩泊まらせたいみたいなこと言ってますが、犯人もまだ捕まってませんし、一応ここはあなたにとっては敵地になりますからね。
この病院は安全ではない。
まあ、入江の先生も多少は社会的信用のあるお人です。
Well regarded in Hinamizawa can be pretty dangerous.
ここにいる限りは何もないとは思いますが、赤坂さんの気分的にめいらないかという方が問題ですね。
That's much more true than what I said, I think. Right, that honestly staying here would probably be bad for him in general, especially while he's, his wife is in, the hospital herself. I'd relaxed a bit now that things had progressed this far, but it was exactly as Oishi had said. When I realized that this was enemy territory, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. With leaving being the only thing left for me to do, the chance that I would come to harm was logically fairly low. That didn't mean I was completely safe.
そうですね。横になっているだけなら、ホテルのベッドでも同じな気がします。
そうでしょう、そうでしょう。私もその方がいいと思います。
At that moment, I caught a glimpse of the clock over Oishi's shoulder. It was the evening. The hours when I could call Yuki at the hospital were almost over. I wanted to tell her as quickly as possible that I would soon be back at her side.
ちょっと、ユキエの病院に電話してきます。ロビーに公衆電話とかはありませんか？
新婚さんはそういうの豆だな。確か会計の脇にあったと思います。ここで待ってますから、行ってらっしゃい、行ってらっしゃい。
Oishi, laughing while saying that he was jealous, opened up the window and pulled out a cigarette even though he was in a hospital room. Appreciative at how considerate Oishi was, I set out to the lobby to find the phone. Why do I feel like that phone is like he's gonna accidentally pick up a call or something, or I don't know. I've been scared of a wiretap so many times, and I don't know that it's actually happened yet. The lobby was just a short distance down the hallway from the hospital room. I thought that this hospital was a bit too grand for a village like this, but of course, it was nothing compared to the general hospital Yuki was admitted to. Running inside a hospital wasn't the best of manners, but calling hours would soon end, so I dashed over in a hurry. There was nobody else in the lobby. It may have been the evening, but there was nobody at the reception desk. Well, this might actually be lucky for me. I wasn't planning to have a conversation to feel guilty about, but it would still be embarrassing to have someone listen to the conversation between me and Yuki. Taking a quick look around, I soon found the payphone. I kind of feel like you're maybe not supposed to use this. Digging around in my pockets, I grabbed a few coins. I was calling Tokyo from here, so I would burn through this amount fairly quickly. I picked up the receiver and inserted a coin, then dialed the number for Yuki's hospital, which I had completely memorized at this point. The number for Yuki's hospital had a lot of 8s and 9s, so dialing it in inevitably took some time. Normally it wouldn't be a big deal, but currently, any time was precious. However, I felt that something was strange as I was dialing in the number. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it was as if the receiver was too quiet. That unique white noise from the telephone line wasn't there. Somehow, I felt that I wasn't getting any feedback from the phone. Without feeling a response, I hung up the receiver to try again. The coin popped out from the return slot. I reinserted the coin and began dialing once again, but the receiver was still dead silent.
なんだこれ。断線でもしてるのかな。
While I was wasting time like this, the amount I had to spend talking with Yuki shrunk. I began to feel needlessly impatient.
すみません。
I felt the presence of someone on the other side of the glass, so I called out. There was an immediate response, and a man who seemed like a pharmacist came over.
はいはい。どうなさいましたか？
すみません。この電話の調子がおかしくて。ちょっと見てもらえますか？
The man came over and tried testing various things with the receiver pressed to his ear. Come to think of it, this was someone who worked at the hospital, not someone from the phone company. Just as I didn't know much about phones, neither would he.
あれ？なんだこれ？
The man held up the cord that connected the phone to the wall. It was completely severed.
なんだこれ？参ったな。これじゃ電話会社の人に直してもらわないとどうにもならないですね。
Oh, that's strange. I don't know what that could mean or why someone would do that, but...
電話でしたら事務室のを使います？
Ooh. I didn't want the people in the office around while I was talking.
近所に公衆電話はありませんか？
ここを出て道なりに行くと商店街に出ます。
Public?
そこのどこかの角のタバコ屋にあったような気がするな。行けば見つけられると思いますよ。
I was dressed in a hospital gown. I was wearing sandals on my feet. My head was wrapped in bandages. Just looking at me, you could tell I was a hospital patient. No matter how you looked at it, I was not dressed to be wandering outside. But that's where the impetuousness of youth came in. Choosing the chance to talk to Yuki for even a little longer, I headed outside in my current state. I feel like now things are gonna get rough. This might be some weird trap. Follow the road to the shopping district. Should be able to find one soon enough. With only those 2 lines as my guide, I ran outside the gates of the hospital. With the village nestled... Oh, it's nighttime, too. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, bro is... Oh, no. With the village nestled in a valley, when the sun set, it got dark quickly. The sparse streetlights lit up enough to start attracting moths. The Higurashi, knowing the time for their course was soon at a close, redoubled their fragile cries. Finding the payphone wasn't as easy as the person at the hospital had suggested. Was it still up ahead? Did I miss it already? Was I just getting farther away? Just as I was about to be crushed by the wave of uncertainty towering over me, I found a shop on the corner with cigarettes written on a small sign. My joy spurred me onwards. Just as I had heard at the hospital, set next to the counter of the cigarette shop was an antiquated payphone. I wasn't wearing a watch, I didn't know what time it was. I probably didn't have much time left, though. But it was enough. Just as long as I could tell Yuki my job was done and I'd be coming home soon. Picking up the receiver, I set a coin down the slot. But I felt that something was strange, just like at the hospital. Even after inserting the coin, the phone showed no response. I hung up the receiver and tried putting in the coin one more time, but there was absolutely no response. This phone was dead. It couldn't be. Thinking that, I felt along the cord that protruded from the back of the phone. Doing that, my hands found the end of a completely severed line. What is this? Why are all the phones in Hinamizawa having their cords severed? Having now had the same thing happen twice, my bafflement was accompanied by a sense of unease. It seemed that the cord had been severed cleanly by a sharp blade of some sort. Now, I may be mistaken, but it didn't look like much time had passed since it was cut. Ruh-roh.
すみません。
Bro, you need to just leave. Like, straight up. Like, I know, I understand why he wouldn't just give up and go to the hotel, right? But, like, dude, I don't know. I would be... Given the circumstances, if I was in a town that I knew actively didn't want me there, knew I was an undercover cop, and this was just after, right, like kind of foiling some plans from some of the bigwigs in that town, right? I don't know. I see 2 cut phone cords, I'm out of there, bro.
すみません。
Opening the booth window of the tobacco shop, I looked for someone in the dimly lit interior. Eventually, there were the sounds of somebody plodding down some stairs, and an old lady appeared. The old lady's plodding and lethargic steps, for some reason, only served to make me more frantic.
タバコですかいね。小さまでねんと。
タバコを買いたいわけじゃないんです。この電話が。
Realizing that saying the phone was broken and asking them to take a look at it was going to get me nowhere, I swallowed back my words.
この電話が壊れてるみたいなんで、別の公衆電話があるところを教えてもらいたいのですが。
The old lady moved her jaw up and down slowly as if chewing on the meaning of my words. It seemed that she wouldn't understand until she had digested things thoroughly.
電話壊れてますかいね。そんな難儀だわ。他の公衆電話を当たってください。
Is that what exactly the last guy said? Hold on, let me... This is a dilly of a pickle. What? I mean, that might just be, one of those Hinamizawa phrases. But, like... I don't know. Hearing 2 people say such a weird phrase in a row makes me wonder if it has some other meaning. The old lady directed me to another payphone that seemed quite a ways away. Her way of telling me was so long-winded that I inadvertently started to get impatient. At that moment, I spotted a clock in the dim interior of the store. The minute hand was just about to point straight up. Even if there was a phone right here that I could use, I would only be able to tell Yuki good night with the time I had left. On top of that, my destination was a remote payphone which I didn't know the exact distance to. If I was of a normal state of mind, deciding to give up the phone today would have been the natural thought process. But at that moment, I had become somewhat stubborn for some reason. Is he gonna, find himself even deeper in Hinamizawa? Dude, bro lost all of his fear of this place somehow. Unable to use the phone in the hospital, and coming out here and still being unable to use one. There's no mistaking that I'd become quite insistent on using a phone.
どうもありがとうございます。その電話ボックス、探してみます。
Refusing her offer to draw me a map, I left the tobacco shop. You just need to leave, bro. You need to skip town. According to the old lady, even though the phone booth was quite far away, it would be easy to find. I feel like he's going to somehow end up at the construction site. If I just followed the road straight down, I'd eventually find it. Sandals flapping as I ran, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I'll admit that I was quite steadfast about calling Yuki. There were days when I was tired or busy when I wouldn't call her. Even today, my entire body was covered with injuries, and I was dead tired. On top of that, there wasn't much time left. It wouldn't be strange at all if today was one of those days I didn't call her. But having twice been foiled trying to call her, had I become hot-headed about it? Was I like a dog who's being told to stay with a piece of food dangled in my face?
何やってんだろうな。
Bro's getting a little careless, honestly. Even so, I somehow couldn't quell the uneasy feeling sitting in the pit of my stomach. Yeah, you need to leave. It was like that with the hospital phone, and the same with the one at the tobacco shop. Both cords were definitely not severed from being frayed by long years of use. The clean cuts indicated that someone had taken something sharp and deliberately cut them. But who? And for what reason? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt, so I tried to push the thought aside. How much had I run so far? The scenery around me was no longer that of a shopping district, with residential buildings scattered about the lonely road. The surroundings had already grown dark. I was blatantly out too far for a quick phone call, and it was quite obvious I was far removed from the hospital. I recalled the clock I saw at the tobacco shop. It might almost be time. I'd run for quite a bit, so my breathing had grown quite ragged. If I just wanted to hear Yuki's voice, I should have just thrown away my reservations and borrowed the phone in the office. Yeah, and that is also really true. I regretted it a little. Well then, was it about time to give up? Just when I thought that, I saw the light in front of me. I'd finally found it. It was a phone booth. Oh, we don't like this intersection. I mean, it might not be the very same one. Right, I understand that the art is just like just kind of a visual thing, right? It's not necessarily meant to be completely accurate, but this intersection, good things don't tend to happen here. It seemed that the light in the phone booth had recently been changed as it shone with a vivid white light. Although in the gloom of Hinamizawa, it was nothing more than a gathering spot for moths. But in any case, I had finally found it. When my hand touched the door of the phone booth, I realized that I was breathing and sweating heavily. I didn't know what time it was right now, but even if it was just for a moment, I might be able to get in touch with Yuki. Since I had spent all this effort getting here, turning back without even giving it a try was out of the question. Before I picked up the receiver, another wave of uneasiness washed over me. I was worried that this phone cord might be severed as well. How was the cord in this phone booth? Squatting down, I followed the bundle of cables as they ran along the corner into the ceiling. At a glance, nothing was out of the ordinary. I ran my fingers as far as I could follow along the line to check it out. The only thing they found was a thick layer of dust. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wondered if it was popular in Hinamizawa to cut the cords of payphones as some sort of tasteless prank. It might be prudent to talk to Oishi-san about this later. Even if it was nothing more than a prank, it was still vandalism of public property. In any case, this one was fine. This time. Pulling out a coin from my pocket with one hand, I picked up the receiver with the other. But this time, before the receiver even reached my ear, I felt something was off. The receiver was light. It was more than a slightly unpleasant feeling. It felt almost sickening. To verify the source of my displeasure, I peered at the receiver in my hand with a measure of reluctance.
なんだよ。これ。
The coiled cord that connected the receiver to the rest of the phone had been ripped apart, the tip of the cable swaying in the air. It was all I could do to restrain myself as a raw and unpleasant feeling worked its way up to the small of my back. I mean, this time it's just ripped out. It's not a clean cut. Dude. This is I can feel the anxiety here. I'm not gonna lie. I'm anxious. It's a type of dread. At that moment, I heard the crunch of somebody stepping on gravel. The light was reflecting off the glass walls of the booth, leaving me unable to see outside in the darkness. I steeled myself and stepped out of the phone booth. It's gonna be Rika, isn't it? The inside of the booth was lit with strong light, which might have made it warmer in there. Just stepping outside, I could feel a chill wash over me. And there was the silhouette of a person. A small silhouette.
君は
Yeah, it's Rika. The long hair of that silhouette was blown about by the cool breeze.
怪我人が病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
Somewhere in my head, I knew who this girl was. I didn't have any basis for it, but I knew that she was that girl.
ねえ、赤坂。
As in, the evil one? She, Rika Furude, said that almost like it was a warning.
君が電話のコードを。
Her expression remained unchanged, and my question was left unanswered. In other words, no response. Regardless, I felt that she'd affirmed my suspicions.
どうしてこんなことをするんだどうして
The last word had a tinge of anger behind it. I frantically tried to smooth things out, but she didn't seem very afraid.
もう、どうにもならないことです。
I interpreted her words as meaning that I wasn't going to be in time for calling hours at the hospital. No, she's going to kill you. Except, I mean, not literally. But, thinking about it, that would have been a strange thing to say. Why would she know something like that? I could take what she had said to have any other meaning. She just stood there like a mannequin, not even moving an inch. Almost to the point that if the wind wasn't occasionally rustling through her long hair, it would be the illusion that time had stopped.
赤坂が私を気味悪く思っているのがよくわかる。
ああ、いや、そんなことないよ。
My denial came out almost like a bad piece composed for a poetry slam, but her words were right on the mark. I'd always felt something ominous and uncanny about her, ever since her strange threats at the shrine. She had noticed that my expression was contrary to my words, seemingly laughing at the gap between them.
赤坂の怖がり。
Oh lord, here we go.
怖がってなんかいないよ。
Being laughed at by this small child didn't sit well with me, so I said that.
もう電話を探しても手遅れの時間です。
そうだな。
She didn't even have to say it. I was absolutely too late. Might have already missed calling hours even by the time I reached this phone booth. I was too late. I had no option but to give up for today. I don't know that that's what she means, man. Once I decided that, my unhealthy obsession with phones suddenly faded. Even I thought it was strange that I was that obsessed. That strange obsession now gone, I began to laugh at how hopeless I was. I mean, just look at what I was wearing. It wasn't normal. A hospital gown and sandals, my head wrapped in bandages and my body completely soaked in sweat. It was a wonder that the old lady at the tobacco shop wasn't surprised to see me. With wanting to hear Yuki's voice as my motive, I had traipsed around the town the entire evening. I didn't know whether to call it the follies of youth or simply plain embarrassing. In any case, it was all I could do but to laugh at myself.
もうこれで今夜赤坂がすることは何もないです。
そうだな。もう何もないよ。おとなしく病院へ引き上げるさ。
それがいいのですよ。病院への道はわかりますですか？
わかるつもりだよ。
She waved her little hand as I began to head back the way I came. She began to follow alongside me. Looking at her face, I could see that she wore a mischievous smile, as if she was extremely interested in whether or not I would get lost.
リカちゃんの家もこっちの方向なのかい？
なのですよ。
こんな時間に一人で表を歩いてると、ご両親に怒られたりしないかい？
I was about to say those parents aren't alive, but that's not true, actually.
別に怒られませんです。今日はご両親は忙しい日なので。
それでも帰った方がいい。きっと怒るよ。
それでも赤坂とおしゃべりする方が面白いのでいいのです。
I mean, I really don't think Rika was just there for no reason. Like, what is the end game here? I don't know. Just trying to keep us away from the dam site? But, like, why would we have gone there in the first place, you know? Like, trying to keep us out of the hospital, like, earlier? Maybe? She said that with a face free from worry as she looked up at me once more and smiled. When she showed me that smile, the eerie feelings surrounding her faded. But even then, she was still as mysterious to me as ever. We arrived at the corner I had turned at earlier. It was much darker than before, and with the point of view changed on the return trip, I wasn't very confident that this was actually the corner I turned at. There's no mistake, it had to be this corner. As I began to move my feet again, the girl grabbed onto my clothes.
赤坂は病院へ戻るのではないのですか？
もちろん、戻るつもりだよ。道、間違えた？
Short moment of silence. Eventually, still holding onto my clothes, she began to walk. It was the beginning of the walk to the hospital this mysterious girl would take me on. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this isn't just going to be, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm doubting Rika a little too much, but I feel like something is going to happen here. Right? I mean, surely the entire chapter isn't literally just going to be Akasaka.
電話のコードを切って回ってたの。リカちゃんだろ？
Surely it's not just going to be Akasaka looking for a phone, not finding it, and then running into Rika. I don't know. There is also the shot that, I mean... Okay, so is this the same night of, Is this the same night? I don't know if they said he was... Or, like, the same night that the rescue happened. I don't know. I think it might be. Because if it's the next... I mean, like, I don't know. There's a chance in my mind that she's, like, somehow prepping for the dam site murder. Right? Maybe they're cutting a bunch of phones so that no one can really be contacted. Like, as it's happening. I don't know. That's all I've really got. Let's move on, though. For now. I'm not completely sure why she was there, but, like, I don't know. I feel like there's something up with it, but I don't really know what, so we're just gonna let it keep going.
ダメだよ。もうしちゃ。
僕には何のことかよくわかりませんのですよ。
本当にかい？
She tried to play dumb, but it was written all over her face.
ニパー。
It was obvious she was trying to laugh it off, but that adorable smile of hers just made me want to forgive her. I'm gonna be a horrible father, aren't I? A momentary lapse in tension was erased by her next words.
孫、無事に見つかってよかったです。
Unable to respond right away, I sunk into silence. I had already learned this from Sato-san's info, didn't I? This girl, no, this entire village, knew everything since the moment I set foot in it. I considered playing dumb, but in the end, I chose not to. With everything being known already, there's no point in me feigning ignorance.
なんとかね。
それはよかったです。これで東京に帰れますですよ。
ありがとう。
赤坂の怪我はひどいのですか？
さあ、ひどいのかどうか、医者の診察を聞いてないからわからないな。
Huh? Come to think of it, I vaguely remembered being told to lie down and take it easy for at least 24 hours. That mean bed rest?
怪我人は病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
I mean, that is true.
電話のコードだって切っちゃいけないんだぞ。
Ooh, got her.
僕には何のことやらわからないのです。
じゃあこっちだって何のことかわからないや。
As we played dumb with each other, we both laughed at the same time. If somebody saw us laughing at each other like this, it would probably bring a smile to their lips.
赤坂が生きてこの村を出られる確率は
Jesus!
決して高くありませんでした。
That's quite a thing to just come out and say.
僕は赤坂に死んでほしくはないので、生きて村を出ることができて嬉しいです。
リカちゃん、最初っから私の正体は知ってたんだろ？
She said nothing, but gave a firm nod.
なら、分かっていると思うけど、私たちはこの村の、どちらかというと、敵の部類に入ると思う。なのに君は、いろいろと忠告してくれたね。
That's right. She said it at that time. She wouldn't warn somebody that she was okay with dying. She definitely said something like that.
なら、私は君に感謝するべきなのかもしれないね。
感謝した方がいいのですよ。僕は命の恩人なのです。
Saying that, she puffed up her chest proudly. She said it jokingly, but the meaning behind those words was quite heavy. That was because whether I lived or died was a decision that might have been made in a place unbeknownst to me. Yeah, true. She said those words with such an adorable smile that it took a few moments of silence for their weight to settle in. I'd been to this place before. Are you back at the... Oh, no. The Guardian's office was there. It was the stone steps leading up to the Furude shrine. When I passed by before, I was so focused on finding a phone booth I hadn't realized where I was.
確か、
Okay.
この
it was
神
just
社が
along
リカ
the
ちゃん
way.
の家だったよね。
It wasn't like she deliberately led you the wrong way?
まあ、
Maybe.
そんなものです。
Looking up at the shrine grounds, it was brightly lit and energetic voices could be heard. What was going
今日
on?
はお祭りの日なのですよ。
Don't tell me. Don't say it. They better not start with a W.
お祭り？
ひなみ沢村の唯一で一番のお祭り。
Oh, Lord.
綿流しのお祭りです。
Yeah. Okay, so Watanagashi is tonight. So, I mean, the construction foreman is cooked.
綿流し？
祭りなんて名ばかりのつまらないものですよ。見ますですか？
She asked bluntly, but seeing that I looked interested, she climbed up a couple of steps and motioned for me to come. This is maybe a bold move right now. I don't know. Like, I can get the interest, but like, dude, he is lost. It feels like his sense of self-preservation is just gone right now. He's like, oh, it's all fine now. Right? She didn't want me to die. Right? And it's like, I don't know, bro. There's still a chance. If I had nothing else to do, it might not be a bad idea to go with her on a little detour. In the hostile territory that was this village, I didn't know what would happen if I ventured down a side road without Oishi. Even though I thought of the village like that, when I was with this girl, I forgot all about it. In any case, even without anything to back it up, I felt that as long as I was with her, none of the ill will from the village would befall me. That's why, even though I knew my cover was blown, I strangely had no qualms about setting foot into the heart of the Onigafuchi Guardians' territory. That, dude, I don't know about it, man. I don't know about it. But it's kind of cool that we get to see Watanagashi again, I'm not gonna lie. But, like, it's like the Watanagashi, right? Like the one, like, in the lore of the game right now, right? The most important one, where everything really started. Climbing up the grounds of the shrine, I could see there were about 3 pavilions set up, with meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks from the village, no, the executives of the Guardians, were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I could only see it as people from the village council drinking while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quite different than any festival I'd ever seen.
ね、つまんないお祭りでしょ。
これは確かにお祭りには見えないね。
大昔からずっと続いてきたお祭りですが、見ての通り、すっかり寂れてしまったのですよ。
Well, I don't know why he would know that, but that's true. As if to chide the old folk, she said that while looking at them with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It was just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival. That's what I call a festival. Man, I don't care about all the fancy, like, decorations and stuff. Are they cool? Sure. But really, I feel like the festival is just like, you know, hanging out with people you know, like, I don't know. Maybe that's not literally the same thing, but like, I don't know, right? For me, that's like, you know, basically a festival, right?
これじゃ祀られる神様も気の毒だな。
Well, that was maybe a bit bold to say to Rika.
こんなみっともないお祭りも、5、6年もすると村中が総出でやってきて。
You know what? You're right.
ちゃんと儀式も真面目にやる立派なお祭りになるのですよ。
What she said was not so much wishful thinking as it was the telling of a future that had already been determined. I can't tell if Rika just has like crazy determination and like insider know-how, or if it's straight up like, I don't know. I don't even know if I want to call it precognition, but that's almost an accurate way to describe it. If she just like genuinely knows these things, right? I don't know. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost like she was simply reporting the results. That's how it sounded. Even though it was baseless speculation, the way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. While I struggled to find the words to reply to her, she wandered over to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in a state where I could afford to be left behind, I hurriedly followed after her. Passing through a corpse of pine trees. Oh, that's not corpse. Copse? I've never seen that word before, I am not gonna lie. I was like, corpse has quite a word choice right now. Passing through a copse of pine trees, a strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. There, from that one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had shown me. As it had grown completely dark, the modest lights littered across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery.
こうして眺めると、この村ものどかそうに見えますのです。
She said that with an indifferent look on her face. Yeah.
君は先日、
straight up creepy look.
この村は絶対にダムに沈むことはないと、そう断言したね。
She didn't reply, seemingly relishing in the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair.
あれは、あの時点でもう、大臣が要求に応じていたという意味だったんだね。
She spun around, her gaze meeting mine. But she said nothing. She spoke nothing that would neither confirm nor deny what I had just said.
多分、今回の事件は、闇から闇へ葬られる。本庁上層部は、多分、大臣のスキャンダルが公になってトラブルになることを望まないと思う。
さもないと、孫を殺すぞと脅したに違いないのです。
で、大臣との交渉が成功し、孫は解放された。
See what she has to say to that.
孫を助けたのは赤坂ですよ。
どうだろう。発端となったあの財布の発見。あれ自体がすでに出来すぎだったように思う。
True. Ever since the moment that wallet was discovered, I felt something was odd. Oishi said it as well, that the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage, meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, I was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me. I felt like they put up quite a fight, but that might have been all part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they couldn't just say, "Here you go," and return the minister's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew that public safety had realized that this was a kidnapping case and were moving in on it. Yeah. I mean, it would explain why you were only shot in the shoulder and why you didn't literally just get murdered, like, several times over, right? I don't know. I'm still wondering if Oishi was in on it. That's why, due to the actions of public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely, so the minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary.
僕には難しいことはよくわかりません。
同感だな。私にだって難しいことはよくわからない。だが、一つ確実なことがある。君が言った通りってことさ。この村はダム湖になんか沈まない。ダム計画なんてそのうちなくなってしまうってことさ。
That wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying, but I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. This village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but that was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves that I had to leave the house I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I just happened to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived for generations. It might be ignorant to call their desperate resistance an overreaction. I might not really be qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind.
でも、よかったじゃないか。
どうしてですか？
少なくともこれで、この村に平和が戻るよ。
You know, I don't know about that. Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take more than a few months before it would all be completely scrapped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 or 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that their village wasn't going to be submerged at the bottom of a dam was still a ways away. No, not really. But it was no mistake that the promise of peace returning to the village was there. It turns out, from beginning to end, that it had already all been decided. Just as the girl had said, it was decided. There wasn't really a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravate an unpleasant situation. If I'd never come here, then the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable manner.
平和がこの村に？
When I nodded, she laughed as if to admonish me. But her face remained indifferent, expressionless. You know, it's a form of peace, right? Not like regular protesting, but I can't say I would exactly call Hinamizawa in the next 5 years a peaceful town. And then her eyes narrowed slightly as she snickered.
これから毎年血生臭いことが起きるのに。
God, I really don't know if this is just like all from Rika being in the know and that this is just a thing the town has decided on, or if this is something Rika just knows, right? Because of some weird like future vision thing. I don't know, because like, I mean, like that's not just some prediction, right? That's like a blatant like on there are going to be Watanagashi killings, right? Like it's going to happen. All right, let's just keep moving.
リカちゃん、何の話だい？
As the wind blew her hair about, the girl, as if taking pleasure in that I was the only one who didn't know, continued to snicker. She looked at my face for a while.
私ね、あと何年かすると殺されるの。
I mean, she doesn't die on all the routes, does he? Or does she? I don't think she dies in chapter 1. But we're just gonna... Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if her expression that had been cast in the shadow was smiling, amused, or resigned.
リカちゃんがどうして？
とても不愉快なことだけど、それも多分決まってることなの。
決まっているって誰がそんなことを決めるんだい？
それを私も知りたいの。
Turning back to face me, she showed me a resolute expression for the first time. and after staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words.
ここは人の命を何とも思わない連中でいっぱいです。
Right.
これを伝えても何も変わらないかもしれないけど。
No, it really didn't.
でも死という月を映す水面をかき消すためなら小石を投じることもあるかもしれない。
That's an interesting analogy. I had no idea what she was trying to say. It's just, I had to listen to every word with my body and soul, or at least, that's what I thought.
来年の今日、そう。昭和54年の6月の今日、ダム現場の監督が殺されます。
I was an entire year off? Whoops. Dude, I really... Oh, I messed that up. Whoops. Dude, I thought he was, like, dead right now. Like, I thought he was just gone. Okay, whoops. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. By the foreman, did she mean that gruff old man I played mahjong with?
殺されるって。どうして？
She didn't answer, but she had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared that the dam project would go away. That wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that was already decided. No. It was as if she was already reporting the results. That sort of expression.
恐ろしい殺され方をした後、体中をバラバラに引き裂かれて捨てられてしまいます。
バラバラ殺人。
その翌年の昭和55年の6月の今日、聡子の両親が突き落とされて死にます。
She even knows the methods? Satoko? It was the first time I heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's story.
あるいは事故と言うべきかもしれない。不幸な事故。
The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with the lifeless look in her eyes.
そして
Yeah, we're
さら
just
に
gonna...
その翌年の昭和56年の6月の今日、私の両親が、そしてさらに翌年の昭和57年の6月の今日、聡子の意地悪おばが頭を割られて死にます。そしてさらに翌年の
Now
昭和
that's...
58年の6月の今日、
This is the interesting one.
あるいはその数日後か、私が殺されます。
Okay, so... She was the one intended to be killed.
すべての死が予定調和なら、最後の死もまた予定のうちなのでしょうか。でもならばこれは一体誰の予定なの？
They feel like they're speaking directly to me. All the deaths are preordained, then the last one would also be according to plan. Then whose plan would it be? I mean, I assume that means it can't be Rika's plan. Or, I mean, unless it's some crazy, like, outmaneuvering, I guess. I don't know. This village is full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths up to 1982 would be the work of somebody in the village. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths that would occur were at the discretion of those who control the village. Excuse me. But the one in 1983... But that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. There was no way that the last death would fit in with anybody's plans. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals. But their goals were at odds with the last death. That's why the last death was unrelated to them. That last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. What? What a strange way to put it. So it feels like they're telling us that the last death is not necessarily related to the 4, but it would happen, and then, you know, most likely, probably, right? It didn't happen in chapter 1, right? Probably, definitely, I dare say. The last death would be a merciful one. A handkerchief or something placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that?
私は幸せに生きたい。望みはそれだけ。大好きな友人たちに囲まれて、楽しく日々を過ごしたい。
Watch her name drop Keiichi.
それだけなの。それ以上の何も望んでいないの。
リカちゃん。
死にたくない。
The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in the end. I have no clue what to make of that sequence. What the hell? So, I mean, she knows all of the killings, including herself. And then seems to also indicate that the last one is also planned, but whose plan is it? Right? And then just in general, yeah, like it would happen in... It doesn't explain 1983, doesn't fit in with anybody's plans. Their goals are at odds with the last death. Yeah, I mean, like, the last death is unrelated. Like, I don't know what to make of this just yet. What a strange, what a wild 2 lines. That last death would definitely, most likely, probably without question happen. Probably, definitely, I dare say. I don't know. Watching this, any real doubt I had towards Rika honestly feels like it's shattered, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I should still be a little more doubtful than I am. But I see this, and I can't help but feel like she's being honest. She wants to live happily. She doesn't want to die. And so if she's involved, it's not of her own accord, right? One thing I really do want to say is this sequence right here really, really reminded me of those like monologues that I thought were from the villain's point of view, right? And it almost makes me wonder if they're somehow going to make Akasaka the villain. I don't think that's super likely, but like, I don't know. Because she told him every killing, right? So in theory, it's like, he could do it. Maybe he was the one who killed, like, Tomitake and Takano, for example, right? Maybe he was trying to keep Rika safe. I don't know. I want to dive into some ideas. I don't have a ton right now, to be clear, but I want to dive into more, but I'm like, I feel like I should just finish this chapter. They're just going to give me more info, and then we're going to come back to all of this, right? I feel like that's the move. So we're just going to keep moving on, but what a sequence. Right, that I'm gonna have to pick apart that sequence, like, for sure, right? Like, no doubt about it. That sequence was very important, right? I mean, even if I don't go back and pick apart every line, just the fact that everything is already preordained like that, right? It, like, I mean, the question is still, like, for me, like, I mean, it's the same one I've said multiple times. Does Rika know this because she's clued into the plans? Or does she just somehow know these things, right? Like I said, some kind of future vision, right? She has, like, I mean, it's self-explanatory, visions of the future, right? Like, I don't know. But either way, she knows these things, like, and, I mean, those aren't things that you should know, right? That, you know, what, 6 years from that point, she's going to die, right? Like, also, the fact that I was a year off makes me think that it's the start of this was, therefore, it was only 1 year after what we're used to, right? Unless I just messed up the timeline and it was an 8-year difference, I don't know. But if it was in 1984, right? If the very beginning is in 1984, then I think there's a chance it's on Watanagashi. Kind of wondering if Akasaka is going to tell Oishi any of this information. That's kind of what I'm wondering right now. Maybe Oishi does something with it. Maybe that's why he's so, like, insistent on this case. The fact that it was all preordained, right? Alright, like I said, let's just move on. I keep wanting to sit here. I'm like, I don't know, do I really have anything of value to add at this point that isn't kind of going in circles? Like I said, fantastic scene. I'm looking forward to revisiting that one. For now, let's just keep moving. There's still plenty left in this chapter, I think. Eventually, we were discovered by some drunks. The girl, as well as I, were dragged back to the festivities. Everybody was completely drunk, so even when they saw my head completely wrapped in bandages, they wouldn't let me leave. Well, certainly, if I was in good enough condition to slip out of the hospital, it must not be that serious. The girl was mingling with everybody, being pampered like a kitten. Her expression was adorable, nothing like the one from just before, predicting her own death and whispering that she didn't want to die. Having said that, having a silly and lively conversation like this, it was hard to believe that these people were the core of an extremist resistance group. Even if it was a shell of its former self, it was a festival where people in the village gathered, so the 20-some-odd folk here should have included some of the village executives and other important members. Among those, there was no doubt that there were members that were at the Sonozaki Family Council in attendance, meaning, even if we never met face-to-face before, there were probably people here who knew my identity. In a small village like this, they knew the faces of all the villagers that lived here. That's why, without even saying anything, it soon became obvious that I was an outsider. But they actually seemed interested by that, asking me all sorts of questions about Tokyo, drinking while musing on the faint relationship the city had with the villages and empathizing with the rather meager environment. The confidential talks with the minister were finished. His grandson was in police custody. Everything was over. I might not have to be put in another perilous situation. To me, they were only my adversaries because of my job. Outside of that, there's no real reason I couldn't be friendly with them. The next time I visited this village, would it return to being a tranquil and beautiful place? If that happened, I might be able to take a relaxed walk around the village with her again. My cup was once again filled to the brim with beer. By the time I was able to get away, it was the middle of the night. The girl had at some point disappeared. It seems that her parents had told her to go home and sleep when she let out a large yawn. The old folks, who had absolutely no remorse for making an injured person hang out with them, told me as much as they laughed. I was just there drinking, so I had thought to help a bit with the cleanup. However, my help was refused on the grounds that I was a guest. On top of that, they had a car prepared to take me back to the hospital. Dude, it's like... Hinami's always so weird, like, they're being so generous, right? Like, just after everything that happened, right? I don't know. I see scenes like this, and I want to believe in Hinamizawa so bad that, like, at its heart, it's not a bad town. Losing the battle against my sleepiness inside the car, I was sound asleep until we reached the parking lot of the hospital. The front door of the hospital was naturally locked at this hour. I wandered around bewilderedly, searching for a back entrance until somebody on night duty found out and let me inside.
こんな時間までどちらへ？入江先生も心配してましたよ。
ご迷惑をおかけしました。神社でお祭りの人たちに引き止められまして。
ああ、そういえば今日は神社で町会の人たちが集まって飲むとか言ってたな。それはご愁傷様でした。傷は大丈夫ですか？
ちょっとズキズキしますね。多分アルコールのせいだと思います。
そうだ。お連れの刑事さんが連絡が欲しいと言ってましたよ。
いけない。大石さんを待たせてたんだった。
In the room, I glanced at the clock. No matter how you looked at it, it was way too late to call him now. I'll apologize to him tomorrow over the phone. I returned back to my hospital room and slipped into the bed that was still unmade from the time I went outside. Oh, that's no good. I have to turn off the lights. My weariness had cut the cord powering my body, lulling me into a deep sleep. And if you can sleep with the lights on, why not, right? This gonna be the chapter? Or are we getting one of those rare chapters that spans over more than one day? No, that's it. Okay, this is a crazy short episode. We're just gonna keep going. But we're gonna go through the tips first, and we're gonna talk about everything as normal, right? So let's read the Mother's Diary. Mother's Diary 1. There was something I didn't like about my child. What a way to start! I first realized it when I started writing these things down. They never warn you about it in any books about raising children, but they aren't just a plaything. If they aren't able to feel loved even when they're not doing exactly as their parents want them to, then those parents are failures. This wasn't something like that, though. How can I say it? It's probably harder to express with mere words. I just want my child to be average. As long as they weren't falling behind, there wasn't any need for them to excel at something. As long as they acted appropriately for their age, I would have been fine with it. But my child had been different ever since kindergarten. While the children in her class were running around in excitement about the field trip the next day, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the other kids broke the equipment for the athletics festival and were apologizing fervently, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the teacher was reading a fun picture book, only she wasn't smiling. Even if they all got to eat a delicious bento, only she wasn't happy. If it was only this, it would still be in the realm of understanding. However, what I don't understand about my child is that if the aforementioned situations happened again, they'd now act in a manner befitting their age. I don't understand the principle behind that, as a parent. That's interesting. It's like they have no clue how they're supposed to act in a situation, and then when they realize how they're supposed to act in that situation next time, they'll act normal. Why were they indifferent about that field trip, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that picture book, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that bento, but happy about this one? The former and the latter in each situation seem exactly the same to me. There was even times where I thought the former one was better. I don't understand that child's feelings. During parent-teacher meetings, the teachers always say the same thing, and I would always respond that I don't understand my own child, and we would mope together. My husband, always the optimist, once said that a young child's feelings are different from an adult's, so if there were some things we didn't understand, we shouldn't worry about it. I lament his lack of urgency. One day, when I was in a good mood, I took the effort to prepare a menu that my child would enjoy, but she only smiled with a vague expression of disinterest. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. Yo! On a day when the weather was nice, the laundry I had just hung up to dry was blown by a large gust of wind, causing the entire line to fall down. But she, watching me try to pick up the laundry in a panic, stood there laughing. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. I think the same sort of thing happened countless times. Before I knew it, my child was only able to look at me with an indifferent expression on her face. I regret the fact that I've been a bad mother. Thinking I should regain her trust, I thought to get it back little by little with some light interactions. Okay, they're actually digging into the weather thing. Makes me wonder if there's actually something to that idea that I've come up with that, like, somehow there's like the weather suddenly shifting like that truly means something, right? And I mean, when we read like the kind of villain monologues, one of the things they explicitly said was like, you know, they live for that chance for it to rain on a clear day, right? Seeing her do some sort of craft work on the veranda, I called out to her.
ここ数日、気持ちのいい晴れの日が続いて。
That child, with that indifferent look on her face I hated so much, looked up at me for a moment and without a word returned to immersing herself in her craft work. Up until now, I would have hit her on the head just for that. I held myself back.
何を作ってるの？お人形さん？てるてる坊主。
A weather charm. Oh, okay. That child was using inserts from the newspaper to definitely make some weather charms. I kind of had a feeling that this was Rika, to be honest. Right? Given how many times we've seen that exact kind of look of... I don't know that I even want to say indifference, but like, it kind of has always felt like her vibe in a way, right? Like, indifference, right? Like, she doesn't usually get riled up by anything. It often feels like she's like playing the role of a kid without necessarily, I don't want to say like knowing how to, but it like, I don't know, some of the ways she acts, they feel deliberate, right? Like, not like natural. So I hadn't said anything, but that was my thought, is that it was Rika. I wonder if it's going to be the same. I wonder if it's all going to be about Rika, or if it's going to be about 3 of the different girls. I'll have some thoughts on this. Let's just keep moving for now. A child was using inserts from the newspaper to definitely make some weather charms. The forecast hadn't called for rain. That child, in her own way, was praying that these sunny days would continue. Being able to understand my own child for the first time in a while, I couldn't hide my own happiness. You have got it completely wrong. Bringing out a ball of yarn, I began to hang my child's cute weather charms from the eaves of the house.
ダメよ、リカ。頭が重すぎるから。ほら。逆さてるてる坊主になっちゃったわ。これじゃ、晴れじゃなくて、雨になっちゃうわよ。
That's the point. When I started to take them down, my child tugged at the hem of my shirt as if to stop me.
逆さになるように作ったのだから、それでいいの。でもリカ、てるてる坊主が逆さじゃ、晴れのおまじないにならないわよ。
So I think it's pretty clear now to me that those three things that I thought were from like the villain's perspective were just from Rika's.
雨が降るようにおまじないをしているから、それでいいの。
It all kind of clicks. I desperately suppressed the emotions welling up inside of me. I was trying desperately to understand my own child.
そっか。お庭の朝顔が晴れ続きで元気がなくなっちゃったから、雨が欲しいのね。
The child turned to me with the expression that I hated the most.
晴れにね。飽きたの。
Yeah, there's the drop. I don't understand. I just can't understand that child. Let's just keep going. I feel like, they're probably all going to be related. If they're not related, I guess maybe we stop and talk about it, but... During the family council, she buried herself under Oryu-san's futon again. Oryu-san dotes on her unwaveringly. No matter whatever insolence my child commits, she doesn't mind. It's almost as though my child is a kitten or something. Oryu dotes on her exactly like you would with a kitten. As her mother, I chided her for doing that. Until Oryu-san had said 3 times that it was fine, I chided her as a formality. Of course, she never lends an ear to any of my chidings. Knowing that Oryu-san's standing was far above mine, she behaves like that. I don't like the cunning that's unbefitting of her age either. Yeah, she is very cunning. In any case, not only Oryu-san, but the rest of the old folk in the village spoil her too much. One day I was surprised. By chance, on the way back from some shopping, I saw her by herself just outside a candy shop. My own child suddenly grabbed a snack, opened the package right there, and then started eating it. She didn't make any attempt to pay for it. She didn't even think of looking around. Didn't even feel like she was shoplifting. Like she was brazenly eating snacks that were offered to her. When I began to admonish my child, the elderly shop owner appeared and covered for her. The owner gave the ridiculous excuse that he had said it was okay for that child to eat any of the snacks out by the entrance, so it was fine. When I tried to pay for the snacks that my child had eaten, the owner refused my money. During that exchange, more old folks had suddenly gathered around and began to feel like I was the one in the wrong. The elderly people all put their hands together reverently in front of my child and repeatedly voiced their respects. I was born into the Furude family, so it wasn't like I didn't know why she was being treated specially. When I was still young, it was something I heard often from my grandmother. If by chance the child that I gave birth to was a girl, that child would be the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. All the older folk believe that she's the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama and spoil her rotten. And not only did they spoil her, but they even told her she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, so she knows. That she had a divine power, and threw all sorts of strange folk tales her way. So she may have begun to believe herself that she was a special existence. I went around and told everybody that it wasn't good for her upbringing, so to stop telling her all these strange things, for there was no uprooting the elderly people's deep-seated superstitions. I told my child not to listen to them, but it ended up being that she stopped listening to me. Between all the old folks in the village who would dote on her and myself who only scolded her, there was no wonder who she would listen to. There was no mistaking that the reason she had become strange was because of the elderly villagers. There was no doubt that they had shoved her full of strange folk tales and superstitions since she was young. If it wasn't for that, there was no doubt my child would have been cute and normal. Suddenly all about Rika. I didn't really expect this, but I don't have a problem with it. Let's read the third one. One sunny parent-teacher day. There was a cooking class, and my child was making curry rice with a practiced hand. While the other children her age were awkwardly using their kitchen knives, that child was wielding hers deftly. The teacher approached me with a smile on their face, saying it must be a result of learning it at home. I managed to play it off with a vague smile and a nod in response. I never taught her a thing. That was because I had never once taught my child how to make curry rice. Even then, she was peeling vegetables with a practiced hand, adding them into the pot in the order of which took longer to cook. For a normal parent, they might unintentionally clap their hands together, happy at their child's actions. But in my case, it was different. There was no mistaking that somebody had taught her how to make that curry rice when I wasn't taking care of her. Thinking that, I quietly fell into an unpleasant mood. When I asked, it seemed she could also sew and do the laundry. I never taught her how to do those, and again, never saw her do it around the house. Be it cooking, or sewing, or the laundry. Again, that was probably because the elderly villagers taught her all sorts of rubbish when I wasn't looking. I mean, that's not really rubbish, to be fair. Not only that, they probably taught her all sorts of strange superstitions, trying to prop her up as the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. I said as much to my husband, suggesting that we keep our child away from the elderly folk. But my husband, who was in the position of being the head priest of the Furude shrine, had little power against the elderly who supported it. He took the rather uncommitted stance of saying that as long as she was being doted upon, wasn't it fine? I argued against that she was our child and she should be a completely normal girl. That what the elderly were expecting, that she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, was simply odd. The elderly villagers believed that child has divine powers. We would discuss the weather for the following day, but there were many times when I left the house without an umbrella and came back soaking wet. Rather than having clairvoyance, that was just secondhand knowledge from her watching the news all the time. The things that she knew she shouldn't have known were just a result of the people who were trying to indoctrinate her and the people who were gossiping getting together in the village. So it definitely seems like her knowing things that she shouldn't is not exactly a new phenomenon. However, there certainly were days when everybody thought it was going to be sunny all day, and that child would stubbornly not go out with an umbrella. It would occasionally rain, and in the end we would be saved. There might also have been times where Rika knew of major accidents in foreign countries faster than the news did. I thought that she must have heard it break over the radio or something. Knowing things she shouldn't have, something like that, was in front of me right now, wasn't it? That child was making curry rice when there shouldn't have been anybody who taught her how to. No. That couldn't possibly be the case. Somebody had taught her, indoctrinated her. When I wasn't taking care of her, somebody had indoctrinated Rika with something.
フルデさんのカレーは大変見事です。先生、花丸をあげちゃいます。ニパー。フルデさんはお料理を誰に習いましたか？やっぱりお家で？はい、お家なのですよ。
The other parents in attendance were impressed. Lies, all lies. I didn't teach her anything. Who was it? Who was the person who had completely indoctrinated my child? She was my normal, average daughter, not the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. Okay. So, I think this has painted a much clearer picture of Rika. Alright. To me, it's really that idea that she basically has precognition feels more and more accurate, right? And that feels like them borderline confirming it, right? She just knows things, right? I don't even know what to say, right? Like, she obviously knows things she shouldn't, right? That is what they were telling us there. The question then is why, right? Is she really some reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama? I don't know. It's hard for me to buy that, but like, you see this character who already all chapter has clearly known things that she shouldn't. And if you look back at some of her actions in the rest of the game, like, that doesn't seem inaccurate. That she knows things that she probably shouldn't. You know, I think back to chapter 2, when she knew, like, what Keiji did. And in all fairness, that wasn't abnormal. But she might have already known, right? She might have already known. Like, in the first place. Like, and then obviously this chapter, right? There's been several instances of, like, and specifically this episode, we had the whole bit where, like, you know, she's like, this is exactly what's going to happen on all of these Watanagashis, right? And she just tells us, right? I don't know. Maybe this isn't something that's been pre-planned and it's just something Rika knows. But like I said, it's hard to say why. It's hard to say why. I don't know. It's starting to feel like there's supernatural at play here, man. Right? I don't know, like, unless Rika's mother is just wrong, right? And she is being told everything. The weather every day, despite nobody knowing it's going to rain, she knows it will, right? Like, you know, she knows news faster than everyone else. She knows how to do things that she hasn't been taught, right? Like, unless all of that has some explanation, I don't know how you explain that without the supernatural, right? Like, I'm starting to lean on the supernatural side a little bit, like at least for Rika. But if Rika's got supernatural going on, why would that not be true for the rest of the game, right? And so that's why it's hard for me to say that for sure. But I don't know. You see Rika, and it just like right now it feels hard to deny it, right? I don't know, that idea that she's the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama, right? And that, I don't know, like, I'm even thinking, like, that might be why she's, like, so bad at, like, just being a kid. That dog will not stop barking. But, like, you know, why so many things she, like, is so indifferent towards everything. Because she just, like, she doesn't know, right? Like, straight up, right? Like, right, because, like, if it's, like, the living reincarnation of a Yashiro-sama, right, I mean, it might literally just be, like, look, they don't know how to be a kid, right? Like, that's a godly figure, right? I don't know, I'm also thinking, like, I wonder if you could explain Chapter 3 with that, right? Like, the big fallout, right? Like, the big disaster, the Great Hinamizawa disaster, right? I don't know, maybe Rika knew she was going to die, and I don't know, somehow was responsible for that disaster, which would explain why, Satoko was saved, Keiichi was saved as one of the few people who was really, truly looking out for Satoko, right? Like, Keiichi lives, right? When, by all means, he shouldn't have, right? Like, I don't know, maybe somehow Rika protected him, right? Like, because he was one of the few people who was truly trying to protect her friends. I mean, even, like, Mion and Rena, like, I don't want to say they, like, gave up, but they certainly weren't trying as hard as Keiichi was, right? They certainly were not trying as hard as Keiichi was to save Satoko, right? So, like, maybe Rika knew, right? Maybe that explains the sudden shift in the weather on that day, right? Maybe it was something Rika was responsible for. I mean, I don't know. We're straight up getting into, like, divine powers in my explanation right now. Before we... I don't know. Ugh. I could see it. I could see all of these things. Before I buy into them too much, though, I think we just need to see more of this chapter, man. Right? Like, I don't want to sit here and come up with all these theories just for later in the chapter to kind of debunk some of them, right? For example, you know? So, I think right now, that's along the lines of what I'm thinking, is that Rika has, like, some weird divine powers, and that might be the cause of some of the really weird circumstances, right? Hell, maybe she's the one who did the time shenanigan, right? In Chapter 3, right? Like, maybe, like, she didn't want Keiichi to be a murderer, right? That's, like, along the lines of what I'm thinking right now. I don't know, but then the question is, like, still, like, why would she, like, plan her own death? There's still some other force at play, like, without a doubt. Like, there's, like, actually zero doubt about that, because, I mean, unless it's straight up, like, Yashiro-sama, her, like, themselves has decided that Rika must die, right? Rika has, you know, declared to us she does not want to die, right? And so that seems like it's not, this wasn't her decision, It's just how things are, right? And so I gotta feel like somebody else is responsible for that then. Which means the big mystery, like the mystery at large, is still not really solved, even if my ideas about Rika are all completely correct, which they're probably not, right? But even if they are, right, that does not, like, fully solve the mysteries of the Watanagashi killings, right? But I think we've got a much better insight, potentially, into Rika, and then at some point we can, you know, review these tips, right? This one right here, which was basically about that idea that, like, everyone is connected, and people's actions can have an impact on those around them, and it kind of has like a chain effect, right? Like the, you know, the gears in a clock, right? But different people and like are in different gears and different clocks, right? Like they're not all connected, right, with everyone. There's only certain people you're connected with. That was kind of the idea there. Which I could see Rika holding some kind of belief like that. I mean, this one was straight up about the weather, why I like rainy days, right? That one was obviously about Rika, right? What's in the box? I mean, this one was also very clearly about Rika, right? That, like, I don't know. That whole idea of, like, choice, right? Like, and how it was, like, this one was about, like, choice, and how choice isn't so great, right? Like, why are we so obsessed with choice, right? I don't know. I almost wonder if it's, like, maybe this is, like, I don't know, part of me is like, what if there's, like, Yashiro-sama is, like, a being that kind of controls Rika at times, which seems relatively accurate, truth be told. And that's this one, right? Like, and, like, I don't know, maybe, like, Yashiro-sama specifically, right, is, like, why are people so obsessed with choice, right? The future is, like, well, I don't know, that's almost like the exact opposite of what was said here, though, right? Like, because this one was about that idea of, like, we don't want things that are, like, or, like, they don't like knowing things and, like, being right all the time. They just want to be wrong, right? They want, like, they're bored basically because of how accurate, right? Like, they're, like their understandings of things is what it seemed like to me, right? And, like, they like the unexpected, but, like, they don't really get that, right? I'm like, that sounds like Rika. I could see this being Rika. This one here, specifically being about, like, choice and why do we care for it so much, that almost feels like the exact opposite of this one. Am I crazy? Right? Like, this one explicitly wants the unexpected, whereas this one admonishes that idea of the unexpected. And I don't know, maybe that's why these right here have the same background, whereas this one is different. I'm gonna have to read them again at some point with that new perspective, but I don't know that now is the time. Like I said, there's so much still to see, right? That is something that I really, really need to keep in mind, though. I guess I note to future me, like, I need to review these and see if they all feel like the same narrator. Right, I guess I could do that this episode instead of doing a double, but I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm like, I kind of just want to keep moving. I don't know. Well, now we're an hour 30 in, starting another one, this video could get ridiculously long. Honestly, we'll just review these tips, see if there's anything else we can glean from these, instead of doing a double. So let's read Gears and Fire and the Taste of Honey again, under the assumption that this might be from the perspective of some being, like, within Rika, probably Oyashiro-sama, right? Or maybe not literally Oyashiro-sama, but just something seems, like, up within Rika, right? So we're just going to read it as though it's from their perspective. The world is filled with people blessed with relationships. Of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is connected to each other. It's obvious that on the other side of the planet, there are people laughing and crying who can't possibly have an effect on you. However, in the extremely limited community of the neighborhood, that sort of connection is just a matter of fact. it's quite possible that a single remarkable event could have massive consequences inside a small community. If you were to increase that in scale, a perfect stranger on the other side of the globe might become enough of a legend to have an effect on our lives. Well, it's not always that way. Like I said at the beginning, the links between people basically aren't that relevant to the grand scheme of things. Whether some household nearby is having steak or croquettes doesn't matter to me. When I put on my shoes, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I put the right one on first or the left. This much the average person can understand. But actually, in reality, this is the truth. The bonds between people are quite well defined. It's not just a matter of distance, of being far or near. For example, let's say that person A's actions have some effect on me. Even then, person B's actions could have absolutely no consequence in my life. The reverse also holds true. Just because my actions affect person A, that doesn't always mean that they affect person B as well. Let's put it bluntly. If the bonds between people are like gears in a machine, the gear that represents me meshes with some people, but is isolated from others. There are some people who would try arguing against this. Those people would bring up the example of gears in a clock. Each gear indeed only directly meshes with one or two others. However, if you rotate one gear, the one next to it is moved, which connects to the next one and the next. In the end, all the gears are moving. There is a logic behind this, more than enough to convince the average person. Why is the argument convincing? The answer is simple. The relationships between people are ambiguous and can only be described conceptually. How the gears are connected and how their movements are chained together can't be used as a fundamental explanation, so it throws a wet blanket on that argument. So for the people who like that explanation, I'll use the example of a clock again to refute it. First of all, to say that this world is a singular clock would be wrong. That is, there isn't only one clock. There exist many clocks in this world, each counting their own time. If you think about it, the idea that this world is just one big clock is the height of arrogance. Even if you use the analogy of gears to explain human relationships, then you should be able to explain it using an analogy of multiple clocks unrelated to a single gear. Neighbors A and B. A is a gear in the same clock as me, so it's best to remain civil. B is a gear in a different clock, so it doesn't really matter to me at all. That's the kind of clear distinction I'm talking about. You want to say I'm being fallacious? Now let's change the analogy to something more familiar so you can understand. You've probably heard the phrase, a fire on the opposite shore, sometime in your life, no? For example, if your neighbor's house was on fire, you'd probably try and help to put it out, wouldn't you? It'd be awful if the fire spread and burned down your own house, after all. But what if that fire was in a town on the opposite side of a river? Would you still go out of your way to help? You wouldn't, would you? Even though it would be the wrong thing to do, there's no way the fire could spread to your own house. Even if it turned into a huge conflagration, there's no relationship between the houses that will spread fire to yours and those that won't. With this basic example, you should be able to see the difference between gears that are or aren't related to your own. Having said that, there's still a lot to think about, even without a river to divide it. After all, it's not a spatial problem like being on the other side of the river, is it? Okay, so I kind of actually misunderstood a little bit what that was about. That one actually felt like it was not necessarily saying we were like gears in a clock, but basically just implying that still that people are connected to some people and their actions will have an impact on a certain subset of people, basically, and that their actions won't have an impact on others, right? I don't know how much I have to add to that, really. It's interesting. I don't know, I guess, in a way, you could kind of see it like I can't really say they're wrong, right? Like, even just within Higurashi, I think of, like, you know, the Onikafuchi Guardians, their actions, yeah, they do end up impacting other people, but, like, not everyone, and I kind of wonder if that, like, that's basically the scale they're bringing this on, like, the actions of, like, you know, maybe, like, the government, like, don't actually impact how the Hinamizawas, or maybe not the Onikafuchi Guardians, but, like, that small subsection that is probably responsible for the Watanagashi killings, it doesn't really impact how they act, right? It's only their own circle that affects that, like, what they do. That's my best understanding of that right now. But let's read what's in the box and see if this feels like it's the same perspective. Do you believe that there are choices in life? There are many people who lament the following. If there only existed points in life where there were clear choices to make, we would be able to scrutinize those carefully and make decisions that would lead us to a better future. Every time I hear people lament as such, I cast it off as a rather trivial worry. Even if you were given a clear choice, it wouldn't be meaningful at all, and there wouldn't be any such path to a better future. Is this hard to understand? Basically, this sounds more like choices don't really matter. Right, that free will is like an illusion. Then let's pretend that in front of you there are two strange boxes. In other words, you have two clear choices. You open the red box or the blue box. A lot of things would be uncertain even with that choice, wouldn't they? If you don't have the option of opening neither, then your choice boils down to the natural impulse of opening the box that holds the better result for you. Then, after examining the shape and features of each, and pondering a great many things, you have to pick either the red or the blue. If this was you, which box would you open? Red or blue? If you were to go by their traditional meanings, then red would be a dangerous, threatening color. However, that doesn't automatically mean that it would be calm and relaxing inside the blue box either. In fact, it might even be that the colors are a trap, make you wary of the red box and have you open the blue. Trap? But it'd be the contents of the box aren't a reward, but rather a penalty. See? Now you're at a loss. You're so conflicted over the choice between red and blue that you've started wishing there was an option to open neither and just leave. But there isn't. You have to open either the red box or the blue box. Oh, I forgot to say this, but if you choose one box, the other will disappear. So you'll never know the contents of the box you don't open. I'll just put that rule at the end there for you. Now, why don't you choose the red box or the blue box? It's alright, you won't lose anything by picking either one. Come on now. I guess we'll go with the one that we didn't, because last time we picked red, right? So let's go blue. Have you thought about it? In the end you chose this color, didn't you? As soon as you chose, the other box disappeared. So you can give up on the contents of that one, okay? That's the rule. Now open up the box you chose. Inside the box there was a stick of chewing gum. Oh, that actually is different. Right now you're thinking, that's it? That's right. The contents of the red box and the blue box were a piece of caramel and a stick of chewing gum. You might have thought that you made the wrong choice before, but now seeing them together like this, you can't really say that either choice was the wrong one. Yo, they wanted me to review this. Okay. Well, that was not something I expected. Well, I guess everybody has their personal preferences. If you prefer caramel to gum, for example, you're definitely thinking of choosing to open the box again based on that preference. The clear choices you wanted were basically this selfish desire to open up both boxes and compare the contents, then pick the one most suited to you. But you see, reality is the same as this game. If you pick one, the one you didn't choose disappears, so there's no way you could check the result. If at that time, you had done this, or perhaps if you had done that, then it would be hard to imagine that you could be happier, or perhaps less happy than you are right now. It wouldn't be hard. In the end, you only have the pleasure of approving of or being disappointed by the choice that you did make. But that's fine. After all, didn't you enjoy the thrill of making the choice? If, like now, you knew the contents of both boxes, then the choice between the blue box or the red box would just be a waste of time. Because instead of this boring game about boxes, you could be looking at the quickly changing evening summer sky, listening for the distant sound of thunder, and pondering if it's going to rain or not. That would be much more fun. Well, okay. That, I'm very glad I decided to review that. I almost wonder if anything's going to happen if I do it for a third time, to be honest. So, like... Is it going to be the same as we saw? Because it might just be different results based on which you choose? Okay, looks like it. Looks like it wasn't necessarily the second time you do it kind of thing. Interesting, but I am glad I did it a second time to look at the other choice at least. Okay, so, I mean, even ignoring how cool that was, that there was a different ending this time for that tip. I mean, first of all, they blatantly tied it into this a lot more. right? But that idea of, like, I mean, they basically tied it back to that idea if you know your choices don't really matter, and that in the grand scheme of things, right, like, I don't know, they almost make it sound like things are going to be the same, or that, like, at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter which choice you make because you have to live with the results, right? Like, the choice itself didn't matter, and so wouldn't you be interested in something that, like feels like it could change, right? Like, because you can't change your decisions, right? Like, once they're done, right? I don't know. Like, it kind of feels like I'm just gonna open this so I can look at the log. I mean, it kind of sounds like, once again, it's talking about that idea of, like, if you knew, right? Like, it's like, what's the fun in knowing, right? Like they're... The narrator, who I assume is Rika, or, like, basically someone, like, within Rika, right, is basically saying that their joy comes from the unknown, right? And that if you knew both results, it would be boring, right, to make that choice, right? You could be looking at other things, right? Is something that you don't know. Will it rain or won't it, right? But they do even explicitly mention things like, don't you enjoy the thrill of making the choice, right? Like, Okay, so it's not necessarily just, like, some diss on the concept of free will, right? Again, it seems kind of looping back to the point we saw in the first one, that, like, well, and I guess more like this one, actually, not the first one, excuse me. This right here, that, like, they're, like, the narrator's joy doesn't really come from what they do know, it's what they don't, right? And so I guess we'll go ahead and transition into this one and reread it, and make sure that it seems like the exact same narrator, rather than just, like, Rika, like, as we know her normally. The weather forecast had predicted that it wouldn't rain at all this entire week. It's not that I hate sunny days or anything. When every day is the same unchanging sunny weather, however, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. If it's simply clear skies for a week, a month, a year, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. The weather specialist said that they had carefully scrutinized a large quantity of past data, so it wouldn't be so likely for the forecast to be wrong. I knew as much, but even then, there was occasionally a day where I was hoping that it would be wrong as I stared up into the clear blue sky. Was I being mischievous in hoping so? I waited and waited, feeling almost suffocated by the boring blue sky undisturbed by a single cloud. If you could die from that suffocating feeling, then the population of Earth probably wouldn't have increased to this point. In other words, the only person who was being suffocated by this was me. And so, I welcomed the summer evenings where not even the weather forecast could predict a sudden shower. If I were to explain it like this, would you understand a bit more about how I feel? Let's say that tonight's dinner was going to be curry rice. But when you're called down to the dinner table, what was waiting for you was instead an eggplant and bell pepper stir-fry. This is just on your mother's whim, by the way. I would be delighted by such whimsy. I don't really like eggplants or bell peppers, but still, I would be delighted. The fact that the pre-established routine of curry rice had been broken would be amusing. If tonight was repeated 100 times, and 100 times you had to eat curry rice, and for just this one night, that was changed to an eggplant and bell pepper stir-fry, there's no way you couldn't enjoy that chance happening. I hate pre-established routines. I really hate when things are all decided beforehand. I have no love for boredom. I always get my hopes up that something today will be different from yesterday, no matter how trivial. Right? I mean, this definitely, like... I mean, you know, I think it was pretty obvious that this was Rika, but, like, this feels really, like, what we saw in the notes from today, right? I hate pre-established routines. I hate when things are decided beforehand. I have no love for boredom. Like, this all sounds like what we just read today. It's been decided that this entire week starting today was going to be clear skies. The weather forecast decided upon it, so the god of weather must also feel obliged to do so. But who's to say that a rain cloud might not just show up one day on a whim? It's something that nobody can say for sure, but because the thought remains in this world, a creature such as myself can continue living without being suffocated. Tomorrow will probably be a hot and clear day. However, I'm the only one that knows that predetermined fate, even with but a slim 1% chance, sometimes changes. Hoping for that 1%, I hung up upside-down weather charms on my sunlit eavesdrops. In the end, I spent my days waiting for those unexpected things in life to happen. I pondered why I was hoping for it. Why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. I've had my fill of clear skies. Then why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. The fact that it was going to be sunny tomorrow was boring. So why was I hoping for a rain cloud? In the end, it doesn't really matter whether it rains or shines tomorrow. Basically, it was just that the rain would water my heart, which was withered from boredom. That's why rather than a TV drama where the plot's already been decided, I prefer to look up at the sky. Yeah, okay, I mean, like, yeah, it definitely seems like they're all the same character, and they're all just Rika, right? Lots of perspective about Rika, right? Definitely, before this episode, I wouldn't have really known all of this about Rika. I'm not completely shocked that those three were about Rika, and now that we've, like, read even further tips, it's really obvious, right? The Upside Down Weather Charms was a blatant reference, right? Like, to what, this one? To Mother's Diary 2. Right, I mean, obviously at the time I didn't know that, but, like, looking back on it, I guess I can't say I'm, like, too shocked, but I didn't really see it. I wouldn't say it was, like, I objectively knew it or something, right? Okay, so those tips were fascinating. We got a lot of insight about Rika and how she thinks, right? And, like, that boredom and how it seems like she just knows things, and that she knows that sometimes there's a very slim chance for things to change, and it seems like that's what she's pushing for. I don't know, maybe she's the one behind a lot of the events of the game, and she's trying to make things different, right? Right? Like, that's the goal, right? Rather than, like, just doing things for villainous purposes, she's just trying to avoid what fate has decided, right, is going to happen. Because it seems like she can see that beforehand, right? Like, she knows things she shouldn't, right? And if she knows these things are going to happen and she doesn't want them to happen, I mean, she might be trying to get that 1% chance where things change, because when things don't change, that bores her, right? It really bores her. Choices are really only interesting, right? Like, I don't know, like, it seems like there's a lot of choices leading up to these events, but, like, in her eyes, none of them are choices. They're all predetermined, right? Like, just a lot, and then they kind of, like, chain and have impacts on others, right? Like, they all do kind of, these three tips kind of feel connected, and it's just a really interesting insight, and I suspect we're gonna get more Rika in this chapter. I would be shocked if her role is completely done. It's very possible, but I don't know. Not completely sold on it right now. But I guess let's talk about this episode as a whole. So, honestly, up until the scene, this was a relatively slow episode, right? The first, like, 40 minutes or so, where we're just walking around looking for a payphone, right? Like, it's just kind of a little, it almost, like, felt like fluff at first, right? Like, they just kind of like, okay, he's fine, he wants to call Yuki, he's being called back, right? And the payphones are cut. Frankly, I think there's a very real chance Rika cut them to lead, I don't know how I forgot Akasaka's name for so long, but it was a way to lead Akasaka to her, right? Because she knew he was looking for a phone, right? Let him all the way to her, and then she brings him to that little ledge and kind of reveals things to him, right? Regarding what's going to happen on Watanagashi for the next 5 years, including her own death, which she's trying to avoid. It makes me wonder if she's trying to set in motion something that will avoid this, right? If that's her goal here, right? That slim 1% chance, because she said herself she doesn't want to die, right? So obviously that was the big scene, right? Like that reveal, like Rika telling us like this is what's gonna happen, right? And it's like, why does she know all this, right? I mean, like, I think it's hard right now to see it as anything besides practically precognition, or not even practically, literally, right? Literally, like, precognition, right? It's hard to see it as anything besides that right now. And that maybe she's trying to throw a wrench in what is going to happen because she doesn't want it to happen. I don't know, but then the question remains, who exactly is doing these things? Because if Rika doesn't want to die, I think it's safe to say it's not Rika herself, right? Could it be some being within Rika, right? Like I said, like if there's like an Oyashiro-sama in there that, I don't know, it's kind of like a, sometimes Oyashiro-sama's in control, Rika's in control type thing, literally possession, right? It could be that, I guess, right? And that separate being inside is like responsible, like for her own, like planning Rika's death. But I kind of think it might just be someone else, right? I don't know. That's the big question left for me to answer, is who's actually responsible for all of this. Oh wait, that was all 3 of our days in Hinamizawa. How did I completely whiff the timing so bad? What? That was our last day, right? Because the first day was the day that we met Oishi, right? Talked to him in the car, and we literally sat in the car all day. Oh my goodness. And then the second day was the tour and the informant meeting, and the third day was today, where we meet, or where we save Toshiki and then talk to Rika. So actually, we might just be out of Hinamizawa. Rika's role might be done, like straight up. It might be like the next episode is us confronting Oishi. I might have overestimated the chapter a little bit. I don't know. This was honestly, like I said, it was pretty slow for like the first 40 minutes, but like I don't think a chapter has made me think this hard like in like the whole game, right? Like that kind of bombshell that like Rika knows everything, and then they just keep reaffirming it. Like this isn't like an accident that Rika knew these things, right? Like her own mother is like, she knows things she shouldn't, right? Why? Right? And it scares her, right? It's real fascinating stuff. I don't know exactly what to make of it yet. The plan is to either maybe record again tonight, it's possible, or more likely we just finish it all up tomorrow, however much that ends up being. So I'm looking forward to it, because this episode it dropped a bombshell, and it makes me wonder if the next episode, however much more the rest of this chapter, makes me wonder what the rest of this chapter has in store for us, because this is going to be it. This is going to be it, right? We're coming up on the last information they're willing to give us before we finish up, this chapter and move on to chapter 5. So I'm really excited for all of those drops, whatever they drop on me. I hope you guys are excited to see them as well, but until we reach that point, like I said, I hope to see you guys there, and peace.